Okay, well, welcome group. We're glad to have you here dialed into our Cute for Teams today. We have our typical office hour agenda for about the next half hour. We'll take your questions. I say we very loosely because it's just me today. Nash McPherson is a peer of mine who typically joins these but has been unable the last couple of weeks for various reasons. And then, of course, Ricardo, who had a little travel snafu between yesterday and today, who's also unable to join this morning. But typically, the three of us take whatever questions you have. We share ideas and use cases, and of course, the latest and greatest around what's available in the government cloud for Teams in particular. And today, the floor is wide open. Feel free to throw your questions in the chat or come off mute, and we can have a discussion. We can learn from each other. I know last week we had discussed Teams webinars and them landing soon in the government cloud. I'm curious if you did not already have webinars last Friday when we met, have you seen it show up in your tenant? And if you're not even sure how to check that, I can show you that too. April or Christiana or Tim?
I'm looking right now. Last week it was not there.
Remember Carolina's uncle?
Yeah, I've heard from a couple of my Florida customers just this morning that they see it new. So I'd certainly be curious, April, if you've got it. And Tim, did you already have it before we met last week? I thought so.
Remember, we were our customer success manager, Reed Sharif, had asked if we wanted to be put in front of the line. So we were, I don't know what that program's called, but we were, however, designated early on. So yes, we got it a couple of weeks ago.
Cool.
No, we do not have it.
Okay.
We're missing some other stuff, so I suspect the agency IT has something turned off. Well, we don't even have some other stuff that we're supposed to have in our office.
Well, April, I wouldn't mind reaching out to some of the IT folks that I'm familiar with there, just to give them a heads up that it could be available any day now for their tenant, just to make sure that they're aware that it's landing, and of course, answer any questions they have about governance around webinars and the things that they can control in the Teams Admin Center to make it friendlier for your agency.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay. Yeah, I'll be happy to do that. April happens to be in my territory as I'm the customer success manager here in Florida. So that's why I'm able to do that for her. How about Christiana? Do you have it? She may not be able to come off of mute at the moment, which is totally fine. Tim, did you have a question?
I just had one question. It's kind of a minor question, but I noticed yesterday, I actually was going through, I really like your, I call it the live send, that, you know, the quarterly communications update.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Because the roadmap's good, but sometimes the explanations are so short, it's very hard to understand exactly what's coming. And so when, I don't know if you do it or however you get them, but when you add in the pictures and images, it really does help. Anyway, there was actually, I'm looking at the license now. So it was a Teams lobby setting where it says people I can invite. Where it's like
that
who
one's
can
been
go through the lobby.
right.
And the only question I had is on the live send, the image, it just, the option said people who I invite. When it showed up on my app, it says people who I invite, and then parents, it says turn off the do not forward. And I haven't actually tested it, but do you know, does that mean if you check that block that it will then mean people cannot forward the invite?
I wonder if that's not a different nuance since the message center post went out. I'm actually in the feature guide now. If you have the feature guide up, do you remember which slide that is?
Yeah, just a second. It's
and I'll share it so our
number
folks can see.
47.
Okay.
New
Yeah,
Teams lobby setting.
that one took so long to arrive. I'm really excited to hear that you're seeing it. There's some testing that I'm doing between now and say mid next week in order to update the guide. So this is fortuitous timing for me that you're asking this question so that I can make sure I tackle this in the next update. I'm sorry, you said 47?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry, I'm scrolling through it over here. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Yep, I've got it. So I'm just going to share my screen so those of you who may not be familiar with the feature guide can see what we're talking about. And then we can go into my demo tenant and see if I also have that setting set the way you do, Tim. That would be very interesting to see. So here we are referring to the new Teams lobby setting coming in for people I invite. And I want to say that I took this particular screenshot directly from the MC post that was shared. So that is what was presented by our engineering team into the message center for IT admins. So I am curious. Let me go over to Teams here. Let's see. Ah, there. Okay, so I'm going to drill into Teams and see if I do indeed have that new feature, Tim, because I had not validated that as of yet, which means it must have landed very recently. Had you noticed it before?
Yeah, it's pretty recent. I've been checking it, I think certainly within the past week.
Yeah. Well, I'm very excited, and I would presume, although I will validate, that if it does indeed have the limitation on the forwarding, that would be ideal, I think. Okay, so let's see. I'll invite my favorite little persona here, and also invite, we can even do a test where I can forward this from Johanna to someone else and validate. Okay, so I'm going to click send, then we'll dig into the meeting options here to see if we see it available as the drop down. Hopefully all of you, because you've attended CUTE before, are very familiar with the meeting options and how you can set your meeting exactly how you need for whatever criteria is important for you, for whether your audience participates fully or partially or none at all. So the setting is this first one, who can bypass the lobby? And the typical default that most of us have is people in my organization or people in my organization and guests. Ah, Tim, I don't have it yet.
Yeah, I see that.
So it must be in rollout. I can check with the engineering and find out how far down the path we are. But you said that it says people I invite and then has a phrase after it about restricting the forwarding.
Yeah, so here's what it says. I'm looking. It says people I invite, and then it has parentheses, and it says turn off allow forwarding in the meeting invite. So, and I have never done that before, but I went over to Outlook. That is an option in Outlook, and we haven't tested it. I just didn't know if maybe you had. We will test it to see if it actually turns off that feature. It's kind of interesting because, you know, what it would actually do is give you an option in the Teams calendar that you normally don't have, right? That you'd have to use in the Outlook calendar.
And I'm curious, is it, yeah, I mean, I have the same reaction you do, I think, in that, is it telling you that you need to go turn it off, or is it doing that?
Doing it right. I don't know, right? It's
so
not clear.
We'll figure that out.
So we'll test it. And I don't know if I can join next week, but I'll let you know one way or the other.
Well, I apologize that I mean, there's not much I can do about it, but unfortunately my demo tenant not having it stinks. I would love to get my hands on this feature. We've been waiting for it for a very long time. So I'm excited. If you have it, then it's right around the corner for the rest of us, I'm sure.
Okay.
Very interesting. And I'm just looking in Outlook Online to validate that. So are we required to use the Outlook client in order to restrict the forwarding? Maybe. Yeah, you guys don't see that option here, do you? I'm not overlooking it, am I?
No, I believe that, I forget where it was. I did find it. I think response options. Can you go back?
Ah,
Right
bingo.
there.
Yeah. Okay. So the nuance here is whether it does it for you when you select only people I invite, or if you have to have this toggled off in
Well,
order for
yeah,
that other feature to work.
since it didn't toggle it off, maybe that tells us it doesn't, because you sent that one. I just hadn't sent one yet. That was the thing. I only
Well,
found
I did send it, but I did not have the ability to, I didn't
Oh,
have
you
that
don't have it.
people
That's
I
right.
invite.
You didn't have it, right? So anyway,
Right.
I'll send one. I just needed to reach out to people because I didn't want to bug them, and it was late
Yeah.
yesterday afternoon, so I just hadn't gotten back to it.
Okay, well, between you and I, one of us will get the answer, and we can certainly share it out next week. Hopefully I'll have this land in the interim, and even if I don't, I can check with folks who, I can check with engineering and see what nuances we need to know about on this one before I publish the next guide. So that'll be good. Very interesting. Cool. So it seems like we're getting back in the groove of having features really rolling out in a more frequent fashion. So I'm excited about that. It seems like we had reached kind of a little bit of a slowdown on what was being released. And I'm thrilled that we're back in a groove where we can anticipate things landing regularly. It makes my guide update much more fun. Now, speaking of the guide, let me check. You guys in the call, Christiana and April, were you familiar with the guide?
No.
I'm putting the link in the chat. It's it's called the Teams Feature Guide for GCC. And at a minimum monthly, we are taking the MC posts, the roadmap updates, and validating against our demo tenants to make sure that we are able to communicate out to you through the guide what has landed, and where there are nuances like the one Timothy and I were discussing just now, we try to point that out so that once a feature has landed, if there's anything that IT admins need to do, we generally will point that out in the guide, and then we'll also highlight any just things for consideration when using it perhaps for the first time. So this shipped section, this update is will now reflect Q2, and then we'll be putting slides in here for everything that has released. We'll move things from their pending release status into shipped in order to keep anyone who has access to this guide abreast of what's coming out. So you can have access to this even if you're not an IT admin. This is out and freely available. I find that it's really effective for business users who have interest in these areas but don't necessarily have access to Teams Admin Center or Microsoft 365 Admin Center, because they can track these features from their initial arrival onto the roadmap all the way through to when they're shipped. So the latest in the last update, and that was last updated mid-March. So that's why I know we are in the precipice of needing to do this very quickly. So we'll be updating this in the next week or so, and you can expect those new slides there. Are there any other questions that you can think of? Doesn't necessarily have to be webinar based, but webinar is certainly the latest exciting feature that we've landed.
Stacey, I've got a couple others, not webinar based. I don't want to take time if others have questions about webinars, but whenever.
I think you're good to go. April and Christiana, y'all can raise hands or come off mute anytime you need. Go ahead, Tim.
Well, first off, I was just going to say you were just on when you on your screen share there, you were showing the reply to specific chat. We got that about 2 weeks ago. People were really asking for that. It's unfortunately only in the desktop. I'm with the U.S. Department of State, and we have a lot of people who can only log in via the browser. So that feature, a lot of people really, really like. I don't know if others. I think on my slide it said rolling from February through April or something like that. But it's a really cool feature. Yeah,
it even internally, like, it has improved the quality of just the flow. We have some very, very active channels and some very, very active even group chats. And the ability to reply to messages from, say, earlier in the flow of things is so helpful to keep everyone aware of the context of these messages as they're coming in. So yeah, I was thrilled about that. And I know many of the CSMs celebrated that one personally when we got it internally. And then of course we knew that it would be a real asset for our customers as well. But yeah, you're right. It's key to know that landed for the desktop users. And it has been available on the mobile apps.
Yes, that's where a lot of people were coming at us from. They're like, I can do this on my mobile app. Why can't I do it on my desktop? And so
yeah. This is one I actually used this morning personally, the mirror and unmirroring your video. This is a good one to be aware of, especially if you have, say, a video background that, has words on it or something. If it particularly bugs you that you see those in reverse or in mirrored layout, you can customize whether or not Teams mirrors your video or not. So I found that to be really helpful. Particularly for my video share that I have this morning, just to let you guys see my profile picture since I'm not live on camera.
But Stacey, if you can correct me, if I think maybe it says it in the text there, others who see your video always see it the right way, right? It's just the video that you're seeing.
That's absolutely correct. So Teams was trying to help us with how our brains process information. They had evaluated some data around seeing yourself on camera and how it's more natural for your brain to interpret that. And initially led with the default that all of the video feeds would be mirrored. It wasn't until recently that your own video where you had this choice, where you could decide whether you wanted to see yourself with the mirrored view or not. And yes, you're right. Always in your Teams meetings, even if things were looking backwards in your own little tile of video feed, your audience would see them correctly. So that's kind of a neat one. Did you have another question, Tim? That was
this one is kind of off the wall, and well, I don't know. I've never quite been able to figure out what happens sometimes with my version of Teams in my environment, but I got the share to Teams option in Outlook Online earlier this week. Now, I was not aware that was coming to GCC. I haven't seen it in the roadmap, and I don't know where it is on the commercial side. Nobody else in my environment has it. I was just curious if you knew anything about it.
Well, I know that it's definitely been something that us CSMs are have always recognized the need. It's one of the first things when people come to using Teams, especially when they're using them in channels with their group members and they're sharing information. In that initial transition away from email as the primary communication over to Teams as the primary group communication, it is one of the first things folks ask for. And we've unfortunately had for a long time to say we don't anticipate that in the GCC, but there have been discussions, I wouldn't say as of late, I think maybe for the last, starting maybe 6 months ago, where there was a new drive towards that. We had quite a few opportunities to engage with some of the engineering decision makers on prioritizing that. But you're right, I had not seen it come across the roadmap or MC posts saying that it was going to be available. So I'm really curious about your version of Teams too, because it seems like you've gotten not only this share to Teams option that you're talking about from Outlook, but also that new one, people that I invite option. So that's exciting, and I'm thrilled for you, and I'm hopeful that we're all just slightly behind you.
Well, the thing,
that's very cool.
so others have gotten the new Teams option, the meeting option. So that one,
Okay,
clearly,
good.
and that one, but the share to Teams people don't, and it actually works fine. The only issue is you can only share to the general channel. So it allows me to select a team. I can share to a team, or I can share to a chat. So I could share to any person, but if it's a team, it only allows me to share to general. So it looks like there is some work to be done yet on it, but it's
yeah. Okay. Well, that is interesting, because that's not the way it works in our internal one, that you're able to send it to, additional channels. But even the general channel would be a great start.
Right. Yep. By far and away. And it pops it right in there, puts a little icon next to it that shows who it came from, and a little email icon. So it's very clear that it's, an email that's been imported as a post into the team.
Wow.
And
How
I can
cool.
show it to you if you want to see it.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
I don't mind
If
showing
you're
it.
willing to share,
Yeah.
that would be great.
Actually didn't check it this morning. I've been checking every day because at times some of the stuff comes and goes. Where did my Outlook go? Okay, so if I go over here, and let me just grab. So I got something here from. So if I click on the 3 dots over here, I got this share to Teams.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, that's what I was hoping to find in mine. So you're.
And so see, I can pick a person, or I can pick a team. So this is a test team that we do. And you see, my only option is general. And I can just say, and it can include the attachments. There isn't one here.
Right.
And then it gives me that. Jump over here to the team. And there it is.
Beautiful.
This is my message. Puts the subject line here with the email, and then the other thing that's interesting, if you click download it, actually, and I'm in a browser again because I'm in that mode. But you say open in Teams, and this I really like. It actually opens it in context in Teams. So you're staying in Teams, and it's all right there. And
well, that is beautiful, and I can't wait to check in on that feature and see when the rest of us might expect it, because I know that one's going to be very powerful, and it's been a long time coming, in my opinion. So I'm glad that there's movement on that one.
So yeah. Anyway, one thing I found out, just for others on the call, this had happened to us a couple of times. We were actually working with another, it was a third-party provider that was helping us with some training. And so while we were doing the training,
they obviously had a Teams environment, and so they invited us in as guests, and it was the commercial side versus the government side. And what we found out was, and again, we were in browser, if we went over to their environment and then came back to ours, we would see things turned on that weren't turned on in GCC. I think they somehow got hung up in the browser cache, and they would hang around for like about anywhere from 6 to 8 hours, and then eventually they'd go away.
Okay.
It was more things like different icons, and there were even some features. But so anyway.
So that's during like tenant switching when you're like participating in, as a guest somewhere.
But I have not been tenant switching in the last week. And the other thing I did is I went and checked my, I do have a laptop that allows me to actually pull in the desktop app, both Outlook and Teams. And there was a share to Teams button on Outlook as well. And it was not an Outlook add-in.
Okay.
Which apparently people can do, or at least there is one around, but it was not an add-in. So
okay,
somehow coming in. I don't
right.
know.
Well, right on. However it landed, I'm tickled, and I think I'll do some testing in my virtual machine, because when I was just demoing, you could see I was just in a browser. I'll launch my virtual machine so I can have that desktop app and the whole desktop client beauty, and check these settings again and make sure that there isn't something that's already showing up here. I'll also update my client and make sure that I have the latest and greatest there in that VM. So awesome. Well, Timothy, thank you. I'm so glad you came, and we have so much that we can continue to share here in our Cute for Teams. I hope that you guys can join us next week, and we'll have the full crew. And it sounds like we're going to have some more news about new features landing all the time. So right on. Thanks, guys. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and feel free to message me if you need anything. April, I'll check with your IT folks about webinar enablement and make sure that they're good to go there.
Okay.
Thanks, Stacy.
Thanks. Y'all have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, and check out the blog for more content.